We came in '55. It's my husband's home. He was in service. He came back, but we came. Charlie Johnson's barbershop was the only thing in the building. It was a USO for servicemen to spend the night before they go back to, I guess, Fort Stewart or wherever.
And up the stairway, that was a dance hall, and the dance hall had 3 floors to it, and that's where the school kid would go for their enjoyment for dancing. They would go up there and dance and have fun. We had about 3 or 4 bands. There was Larry Noble, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Larry Noble, and it was also Snappy Six, Walter Langston, and they would play real nice music.
As you know, everything was segregated. You had nothing for the blacks. You couldn't even go in the motels, the restaurants and all.
That segregation was the way of life. They're just like black water and black restrooms.
And they changed that in '63, but prior to that, upstairs on the 3rd floor was a big space they called dance hall. The dance hall back in those days was for teenagers, adults, and they had affairs up there like...
Student at Beach Collar High School, and Mr. John Law, who was our history teacher, decided to organize a high Y club composed of high school boys connected with the YMCA.
Beach High was giving this dance, and I decided, we heard the music, and I said, well, let's run up here and see what's happening. This one of the youth barbers downstairs that I was training. And we went upstairs, and I looked around, and I saw this little pretty girl, and I just crumbled like Rome.
The Head Start program rented some space in the Y for classrooms, and also they leased the kitchen.
I understand a daycare for children and some office spaces, but that's about the best thing I know we could do. And what can hold those many people that it would hold upstairs in that building. And I think Connell's Temple, that's the best thing could happen since Reverend Mitchell is here, to utilize the place and open it up again.
Well, it's almost a historic building because the things that I'm talking about happened more than 50 years ago from my affiliation with the Y, and so they're trying to preserve it because it is a historic building and they are doing a very good job.
Somewhere there's a bright side. Somewhere, don't you stop till you find it. The church, through much prayer and through talking with certain church leaders, working through the congregation, I began to share my vision with the church. First of all, with the church's growth, we didn't have enough room where we were to do any additions. So we saw that by the community was declining, and that building then had gone down to but just one particular shop. It was a barber shop. We saw a great opportunity to bring back to life what the building was in the day of 1927, right after the Depression. And what we have here as we go into the new millennium is that things had decayed and buildings were rotting down, and the building, the whole community was just going down. So here's a church that is supposed to bring life to a community. Rather than having a congregation talking about moving, going to the south side, where everything is new, then being a church of Jesus Christ, being a disciple of Jesus Christ, and being the church, then we are to make things better and to give service to where no one wants to come. And so we can't say enough about what the Old West Broad Street Y meant to the community, and what it is doing now for us. We killing maybe 2 or 3 birds in one shot. We are restoring the place. It's restoration. And one thing about it, we had to restore the people first. Before you do rehabilitation, you have to rehab people. That is, that you teach them, for there's a lot of folk are unbelievers, but now as we come, some of them are still believing that we are rehabilitating and bringing back up something. That building was built in 1927 by McKelvey Powell Hall, who both were African Americans contractors, and they nailed. And so that what that building meant to the community was that during that time of not only depression and segregation, see, that was the only place for, that was the first, I believe, one of the first Ys that was built for African American, black or colored at that time, in the state of Georgia. So what that building meant was we've had some of our greatest famous people to stay in that building. Joe Louis, who was a heavyweight champion of the world, stayed in that building. Hank Aaron stayed in that building when he came to town as a part of the Y. Then that building was used for the USO. That's the United States Officers Club, because during segregation, blacks were not allowed on the base of the army. In as a young seminarian at 24 and a half years old in 74, saying let's build, and they hadn't finished paying for what they had, and they just built a brand new building that seats between maybe 750 folk, from 600 to 750 people. Choir stand with about 80 or 90 people in it, and it was the church of the decade, or the 2 decades of the community, the only brand new church there. At that time, you're talking about coming in, building again. I mean, that's as far as they saw. But then when we come in, we had to do some teaching. We had to gather youth and set things into place. And one thing that we did learn in church administration and in the church is that before you can get people to see your vision, you got to teach, preach, live, share, so that they can see what you see. And you can't do that overnight. And in some cases where people could not read, and people who hadn't been exposed, it would even take longer. So by 1980, 81, then they could see that the community was declining. We were the newest building on the block, along with Carver State Bank's building, because they built right after 70-something that we got there, their new building. They began to see what I was talking about. So it took some years to get that. And then to buy that whole entire block, it took us about 10 years to get that. And why it took so long is I'm dealing with not rich people, I'm not dealing with philanthropists, and I'm not really dealing with big corporate heads that make $100,000, $150,000 a year. I'm dealing with grassroots people, few school teachers, maybe 1 lawyer, maybe 2 doctors, but a host of teachers, but majority of housekeepers, maids, cooks, housewives. Will be a daycare / pre-K program for 20 students. The second part of that building down on the first floor will be a senior citizens program, senior citizens daycare. Also, what else will go in that building is like a cafeteria. The cafeteria style, like a Morrison's or a Piccadilly, a cafeteria where people can get vegetables. Right now, our whole society is built on fast things, fast food, and we really are not getting the nutrition that we really need. So that would be the only cafeteria in that area. So that cafeteria then will be able to give lunch also to daycare, pre-K, and also to senior citizens, and hopefully the community. Now, what that will foster is to have a relationship, also which we will have, and which we do have a relationship with the Savannah Vocational College, where students can be trained to provide services, cooks, chefs, if you please, and maitre d's and waiters, to bring that kind of exchange from the community back to an institution. Also, what we will have is on that same floor will be seating capacity of 300, which half of that 300 will be cornered off into a room so that you can have classes or anything that you want to talk about, budgeting or whatever. Now, on the second floor, we hope to have health, and that is working with the health department of our county to make sure to really distir away a lot from preventive health. We would do preventive health there. And also computer classroom, computer room, whole computer, what you call it, a center, whole computer center. And what else would go there would be various offices, like for a doctor's office or whatever. We go in there. Right now we do have a dentist and we do have a doctor that's been offered. And the whole computer center and training along with Savannah Votech. The third floor is going to be almost like open space for when I was in New York, they had what you call off-Broadway plays that didn't make Broadway, and they didn't have to pay the heavy rent, for the other things. So it'll be a place, a multi-purpose floor. For banquet facilities, you have a kitchen or a cafeteria downstairs, so you will have banquet facilities for weddings, for little small parties, or either where the art students that's in theater, it will be a stage there so that they can, which will seat around 350 to 400 people on that third floor, where you can have various plays and training. And also we'll be able to use it as for social hour for teenagers, trying to teach our kids how to intermingle with formal dances and things of that sort. And there's a place also where because we can tie off those different spaces for workshops on health, finance, for teen pregnancies, all different types of workshops that folk will that will be in need. So it's a multi-purpose building, which it was used for in 1927. We have about 225,000 cash dollars in the building, besides buying the land. And we've been able to get a few grants, federal government, special purpose grant from Congressman Cynthia McKinney, $350,000. Senator Diane Harvey Johnson, state senator here from Savannah to Georgia, she was able to procure for us through her leadership at the state $400,000, and we've been able to get a few little grants here and there, $7,000, so much from the historic, and the other money came from the congregation. So current stage, we're at going into our second phase. Second phase is completing elevator, some outside work. So that's 1A, that's phase 1A and phase 2. 1A has to do with the finishing of the tail end back there, the cover end. Phase 2 will deal with all of the roof and the windows, which are in place, which will be in place in a few days here now. And so it's phase 2 and then phase 3. So we hope to finish the building by March of 2002. How do we get where we are now? It's only by the grace of God. John 14, verses 9 through 12 mean a lot to me, in that Jesus admonishes us that if we believed in him, greater work that we will be able to do. And he reminds us to ask, to seek and to knock, because he promised that whatever we ask in his name, and if it's in his character, and which outreach is in the character of Christ, in the character of God, to reaching out for the less fortunate. And that's what we're about, rebuilding the community, and that he will supply our needs. And that's what has been done. If you look at that building and you look to see where we come from in that building and how it was acquired, and through all of the obstacles and non-belief and doubt of others in the congregation and out of the congregation, the doubt among those that have and those that have not, you will see that only faith, you can see the faith in God is at work. Only faith, only God's grace and faith is rehabbing and restoring that building. It's a great testimony for the people of God. And those of us that hear this tape, we are soliciting, because we are starting our fundraiser throughout the community to finish the building. The building is at $2.4 million right now. We need about another $1,400,000. And through prayer, through our giving, whether each month we average around $4,000 a month. So we're chipping away at it, and we do hope with hopefully when folk hear this, some benefactor, and knowing what we're trying to do within this community, that somebody will write a check to Con Ed Incorporated, which is tax deductible. And we're just happy about it, and we are enthused about it, because only our faith in God is able to bring us this far. I'm elated about it, and I'm very happy. And I fall down on my knees. Then I call to my Father, just as long as I play. And there's a bright side, oh yes it is, somewhere, oh hallelujah. There's a bright side, Lord, somewhere. Yeah, don't you stop till you find it. There's a bright side, oh Lord, somewhere. Listen at me, y'all. When your wake is dark and drear, you don't have to worry, for my God is near. For in your heart there is no song. Just keep the faith, keep holding on. Turn that plate down, fast and pray. Jesus will always, he'll always make a way. There's a bright side. Oh, yes it is. somewhere, and oh, there's a bright side, oh Lord, somewhere. There's a bright side, a bright side, a bright side, Lord.